Yes, sir.
I'm not a Christian, I'm a Muslim, so pardon my questions. The Ten Commandments you talked about certainly provide a very enlightening spiritual guide for people. But as a society, compared to the Mosaic Law, where it has a single law for every single thing you're ever bound to do, I see that really the laws that Jesus came with, the code of life he came up with.
Sorry, code of?
The code of life that he's supposed to have given us is not sufficient to envelop society like Jewish law or Islamic law. How do you think Christianity can fix the world if the absolute law that you demand is not present in Christianity itself? You can't love thy neighbor and love thy father and just bring it on from there.
Okay, good question. And did you say you're not a Christian but you're a Muslim?
I'm a Muslim, yeah.
Okay, I appreciate that, sir, and thanks for asking. I think it's a wonderful question, and I can see actually why you would even raise it, because when you look at the Islamic code, everything is enjoined, everything is described, from your diet and your fasting and all of that. It is all enshrined in and all the way up to the Sharia and the court and the law, etc. Jesus stood in stark distinction to both Islam and in the way the Judaizers were using the law. He never came to destroy the law. He made that very clear. He came to establish it. What he reminded us is that by the keeping of the law, no flesh can be justified. This is a fundamental difference between Islam and Christianity. That in my faith, I can be absolutely certain that I am forgiven, not because I am righteous. For you, it would be purely the will of Allah whether He chooses to grant you that salvation or not. But don't ever forget that what Jesus actually said was transcend the written law in any way. For example, He says, you say, you shall not commit adultery. He said, I'm telling you, if you look upon a woman with lust, you have already committed adultery in your heart. He has already established that now on a higher plane. He says, if you hate somebody, you've already committed murder. If anything, He establishes it on a higher plane than either the Quranic law or the Judaizers would have used. So let me take you to what I think is a classic response to your question. If you take the Sermon on the Mount and see what Jesus said is the characteristic of the child of the kingdom, you've got there inscripted not only what the moral boundaries are, it's not my law, by the way, what the moral boundaries are, but how only by the change of heart and beginning with the poverty of spirit can you come into that relationship and live as a child of the kingdom. For example, when He took the whole story of the Good Samaritan, the person questioning Jesus said, who is my neighbor? Did you notice? Do you remember how Jesus answered that? He basically answered it not by telling him who his neighbor was, but to whom are you being neighborly? He said it again on a higher plane. So I think the difference between, say, what you are raising for me and what the Christian faith would give to you is that the Christian faith is not devoid of a moral law. It sets it on a higher plane and reminds you and me that we cannot keep it in and of ourselves. Jesus described the moral law as a mirror. You can look at a mirror and find out that your face is dirty, but you don't go and rub your face on the mirror to clean it. So you go to something other than the mirror, and the law, says the Apostle Paul, is a schoolmaster. If anybody knew what the moral law was, it was the Apostle Paul. And he found out at the end that it was only the grace of God and the mercy of God that was able to give him salvation. It doesn't deny the law, it affirms it and shows ultimately the impossibility for you and me to keep it. So it does not destroy the law, it shows that He alone completely fulfilled it. No one else ever did.
Amen.
One more, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah. Jesus spoke in a lot of parables, which in my culture, in my world, because I'm Arab, we're accustomed to that.
Yes,
but
sir.
parables are too abstract. You can't take that to the bank. parables are not the law. But you know, all the thing that you just mentioned is the reason why there are 1,001 churches and denominations around.
Okay.
The Christianity is not united, and I think that's why.
You know, I appreciate what you're saying, and I think there's a lot of truth in what you're saying, but you're forgetting an awful lot too. There are scores of Islamic sects as well. Scores of them. The first 3 caliphs were murdered, assassinated. Why? 2 of them were by counter-Muslims. So you've got the Seveners and the Twelvers and the Ismailis and the Ahmadiyas and the Shiites and the Sunnis and the and on and on and on. So yeah, let me finish. So my point to you is, your point is well taken if you understand one thing, that ultimately you and I are not Christians by the denomination or the abomination we belong to. We are Christians by becoming followers of the... What's your name, sir?
My name is Hani.
And I'll be glad after the meeting to stay and talk to you. I saw you here, and I appreciate your questions. You know, this is so interesting, born and raised in India. I used to hear this all the time. This is what I also said. What's the Methodist? What's this? You know, the story was told about a man who said Jesus healed 2 people with mud, of eyesight. With one he used mud, and with the other he didn't use mud. He said, thank God it didn't happen in our day. We'd have 2 denominations, the Muddites and the anti-Muddites. You know, it's true. There are many of these sects. But you know what is so beautiful about that possibility? Unity does not have to be uniformity. What ultimately defines whether you're a Christian or not is not what denomination you belong to, but whether you know Jesus Christ in your heart as well. And that you can come to know too. But thanks very much, and we'll see you after the meeting. Yeah.